Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Nick Marro here with DFS Jayhawk to help you break down tonight's NBA DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. If you guys are in the chat, let me know if you can hear me. We've been having technical issues as we often do when Eric or Chuck aren't producing. Gonna do my best here to make sure this is working, but yeah, let me know if you can hear me or not. But as I wait to hear from you, Jayhawk, how was your Thanksgiving? What are your initial thoughts on this slate we have tonight?
Yeah, man, Thanksgiving was pretty good. Just hung out with the family, watching football. Pretty nice having a day off of from NBA just to hang out. But yeah, in terms of the slate, pretty fun slate today. Tons of great up top players with Jokic and Giannis. Assuming Giannis plays, and then just looks like we have Trey Lyles as the main source of value today so far. But definitely a bunch of news that could change that.
Yeah, so whenever Trey Lyles is the top value play, it's going to be a little iffy. We also have Alexander Walker as one of the top value plays. But yeah, I guess the first thing we should do is maybe talk through some of this injury news. It looks like we are able to be heard, which is certainly a good thing. So yeah, the first piece of news we're waiting on is Giannis. Just pulling up a few other things on my other monitor here. Yeah, so that game doesn't lock until 8 p.m. The slate locks at 7:30 p.m. I am speaking in terms of Eastern Standard Time. Excuse me. So it looks, yeah, do you have a hunch? I mean, the spread here is 11 and a half points. It's a home game in Milwaukee. I think it is the play-in tournament. So, like, intangibles tell us that Giannis should probably be good to go here. On the other side of that, I guess they probably don't need him. They could probably beat the Wizards soundly without him. I'm guessing they have a couple games the next few days, and that's why he's even questionable to begin with. But I mean, what's your hunch? Do you think he goes?
Yeah, so the spread actually moved down 2 points. I believe is 13 and a half to start out the day, and it shifted down to 11 and a half. But I mean, that could just be, they're giving Washington a couple of points, but I think there's a shot Giannis hits, but either way, Milwaukee should um, pretty handily be able to beat Washington here.
Yeah, and I mean, if Giannis were to end up sitting, obviously first and foremost, we're going to be getting to Dame. I'm going to click
Yeah.
over to Milwaukee here in DK just so I have something to share on the screen. But yeah, we've seen Dame have some massive, massive games with Giannis out of the lineup. I believe that 67-point game was without Giannis. Obviously, he needs usage to do what he does. He's a scorer. They can coexist as far as winning basketball goes, but when it comes to DFS, if we're going to feel good about Dame's floor and ceiling, obviously we feel better with Giannis out. Obviously, other guys we'd be considering here, like Chris Middleton. He's been on a minutes limit. I know the model really liked him today, though, even with Giannis in. I think it's because he got up to 29 minutes last game. And I guess if we're going to use deductive reasoning, that tells us maybe his minutes cap has been lifted or at least pushed to 28, 29 minutes now. Was a competitive game against Boston. They're easily the two best teams in the East, maybe in the NBA. So no shock there that they wanted him on the floor for that one. But yeah, I mean, do you trust the minutes cap on Middleton? I don't think we've heard any true coach speak, but to see he's playing 29 minutes tells me that maybe he's good to go now, finally.
Yeah, so I think he's good to go. Obviously he's still a little bit older of a player, so I don't think they're gonna ramp him up too much from here. But I think
Mm-hmm.
around 30 minutes is probably where he's gonna be hanging around the rest of the year in terms of minutes. So I think he looks really good at his price point at 5,600. And then gets a great matchup against Washington on top of that. So yeah, I like him a lot at that the mid range. Obviously gonna be pretty chalky, but I'm fine eating it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think even with Giannis in, you could feel pretty good about that 5,700 price tag. And if they are trying to ramp up his minutes, even if this game were to blow out, they probably want to get him to around that 28, 29 minute point. So he's underpriced if that's going to be the case. Obviously, if Giannis is out, he's even more appealing. And if Giannis is out, we'll be looking to guys like Bobby Portis. I know I had one of my best slates this year going Lopez over Portis in a game that Giannis was out, but I think you could go either way. But we'll obviously keep an eye on the ownership in that one. Other big piece of news here is Tyrese Halliburton. So he is suddenly listed as questionable. He was added to the injury report during the day, which is usually a bad sign. I don't know if there's any good reason for that. I don't know. I didn't really see any definitive reports or anything, but obviously, if he's out, that's going to create a trickle down effect. Maybe we get TJ McConnell. I know that's been a controversial play when Halliburton's out because he doesn't always start at point guard. But Buddy Hield, who's recently slid into the starting lineup, is going to look really solid here regardless. I think he's a bit too cheap. He is scoring dependent, but he did show us last time that he has that massive ceiling. Again, even with Halliburton in. And I think I called the Pacers matchup kind of the Coors Field. I'm also an MLB guy, kind of the Coors Field for NBA DFS right now. So there's definitely going to be pieces of Detroit we like on the other end. But yeah, I mean, who else would we be getting to, I guess, if Halliburton's out? Is it McConnell? Are you going to feel good about a Mathurin who's been pretty inconsistent? Or would you just really load up on Buddy Hield and hope that's enough? Because, again, this game does have a massive total. Regardless of whether Hallie's in or out, I think it's going to be very fast-paced with a lot of points.
Yeah, so I'm right there with you. I think TJ McConnell would become the top value play on the slate. We also have another guard on their team. What's his name? Andrew Nembhard is also questionable. So if he's out as well, pretty much McConnell's going to have to play the majority, if not all, the guard minutes. So I think he'd become definitely a core play. Yeah, and then like you said, Buddy Hield at 5,500, coming off a massive, massive game, would look incredible at that price tag too. And then one last guy that kind of, yeah, you mentioned him, Benedict Mathurin. Would prefer him if he started, but even if he came off the bench, they need his scoring. So I think he would be a reasonable option at 5,400. But I think McConnell and Hield would definitely be the priorities if Halliburton was out.
No, I'm totally with you. And yeah, Mathurin, I mean, he's kind of like Hield in that they're both kind of scoring dependent, but we've seen huge games out of them. But again, we feel better if they're starting because those minutes are secure. Rick Carlisle, the coach for the Pacers, one of the tougher coaches to read when it comes to rotations. This guy kind of changes his mind every day, whereas some coaches, like a Thibodeau, for example, really try to hammer in rotations, keep them consistent. Carlisle, I don't know, if he's in a certain mood, he'll change things up. Any given day. So really not a friend of ours when it comes to playing DFS. As far as other major injury news goes, I think we saw Zach LaVine and Kobe White are both listed as questionable for Chicago. I think LaVine was upgraded from doubtful to questionable, so he should be okay. I did see he went through shoot-arounds. But the Kobe White one, I think he was added late in the day, and obviously if he's out, Alex Caruso is going to be really appealing here. Caruso's been hitting value even in limited minutes. We see games where he's playing 23 minutes, still getting to 30 fantasy points, etc. So if you can get him to 30 fantasy points, I do think Caruso is going to become one of the better value plays on the slate. But do you have any hunch as far as those injuries go for Chicago? I think LaVine goes and maybe White doesn't, but maybe that's just wishful thinking on my end.
No, that's exactly what I thought. Obviously, LaVine just got the game for rest off last game, so I think he most likely comes back here. And then obviously, Kobe White was a midday or mid-morning downgrade. So I think Kobe most likely sits. I'm right with you, and I think Caruso would look really, really good at 48. And then another guy we can mention is Ayo Dosunmu. I totally butchered that, but he's really cheap as well at 3,500, and I think he'd be a reasonable value play as well.
Yeah, no, I would like him as value as well if Kobe White is out. And then I'll just use this as an opportunity to transition. We did just get news just a second ago that Precious Achiuwa is back and will be available for the Raptors. Not someone I'm ever rushing to get to, not a guy we see consistently playing over 20 minutes. But yeah, I think you could do worse than 4K Achiuwa. At least we know he'll be in the rotation. That really does take me off any shares of Chris Boucher, though. Someone who's been burning people with Achiuwa out more often than not. He does have that ceiling that we see from him occasionally, but really that's like a dice roll whenever we're dealing with him. So I think that's it for major injury news. Obviously, I have an eye on the news feed. If anything comes up, we'll talk through it. But let's go position by position here. We'll start with the guards. This is assuming we have all those guys we talked about in. This is Halliburton in, Giannis in, etc. So things will change quickly if either of those guys are ruled out. But taking first look at guards here, sorting by ownership on DK, we see Buddy Hield as a massive piece of chalk. No surprise there. We already talked about him. Chris Middleton as well. We're seeing Anthony Edwards pretty popular over on DK. Maybe that's a product of the pricing where he's only 8,700. One guard I'm very interested in tonight in that Coors Field game against Indiana will be Cade Cunningham for the Pistons. Finally saw a really big game out of him. Pretty inconsistent to start the season, but he is probably the best offensive player in that offense when things are going his way. We get him sub 8K on both sites, and on a decent sized slate, I think 23% only. Oscar Thompson, and yeah, I mean, I guess Alec Burks off the bench, like, they're going to have to score points. So I don't know. I like Cade there a lot. Nikhil Alexander-Walker, one of the more popular pieces of value on both sides. We've actually seen him have some pretty solid games with Jaden McDaniels out of the lineup. Obviously, McDaniels isn't a shooting guard, but the way they kind of set up their starting lineup, Anthony Edwards slides down to the 3. They get Alexander-Walker at the 2. And then Towns Gobert, obviously, in that front court. But instead of having McDaniels at the 3, Edwards at the 2, they go Edwards at the 3, Nah at the 2. And he's been pretty solid. He is scoring dependent though, but we've seen him play 28 and 33 minutes in the last 2 games respectively with McDaniels out. Just over 20 fantasy points, and his price has come up. So how do you feel about Alexander Walker as chalk? Because I think we both agree he's a pretty good play at his price, but as the ownership climbs, we're lacking value. I mean, is it a place maybe you can get away from? Or, I don't know, I guess he's probably one of the more comfortable value plays for me right now, but even that doesn't feel great to say out loud.
Yeah, so on last night he was 3,700, so obviously we got a 700 price bump there.
Yeah, that's
But
big.
as of right now, he looks pretty solid for value. We don't have too much value on the slate, so I think he's fine. It's a great matchup against Sacramento, so I think he's at the current moment, I think he's a pretty solid value play. But if we do get Kobe White out and Halliburton out, I think he's going to look a lot worse in terms of value. Wait, and I think there's one more piece of news I kind of want to highlight,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of impacts the guards. We have no Duncan Robinson. I
Yeah,
know he's more of a
good call.
forward, but I think that makes Josh Richardson a really, really sneaky tournament play.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I mean, only 60% owned right now on DK, 2% for Josh Richardson. I know we also have Jaime Jaquez probably coming off the bench. That's another guy likely to benefit with Duncan Robinson out of the lineup. But yeah, I think that's worth talking about. Definitely missed that when I was bringing up the injury news earlier. Yeah, Robinson's already ruled out, so we can definitely look to Richardson, who I do expect to start here. Not a great matchup with the next 2 teams that play pretty slow, one of the lower totals on the slate, but we have seen Richardson pretty much push value at this price point, even with Duncan Robinson in the lineup. Still no Tyler Hero either for the Miami Heat, so there is usage to go around. It sounds like they will get Bam back tonight, but I'm with you, man. I do think Richardson's a solid play. He does more than just score. So even on FanDuel, where you get a little extra for the steals and blocks, I think he's very appealing over there. And yeah, Lowry will be in the lineup, but we have seen Richardson kind of play that point forward role on occasion where he takes the ball up the court. So I'd be interested in him even if he were coming off the bench, but I do agree. I think he starts tonight. And then Jaquez, we'll talk about when we get to forwards, but I do think he's another piece of value we're definitely going to want to consider with Duncan Robinson out. So definitely appreciate you bringing that one up. That's a miss on my end. But yeah, some of the other guards here. I mean, we have Jaden Ivey for Detroit against the Pacers. I think he's pretty interesting. Chris Duarte was chalk value the other night. It seems like no one's going to want to go back there. Still no Keegan Murray for the Kings, so I do expect Duarte to start once again. But this is kind of that situation we run into often where we see a piece of chalk completely flop. I think the minutes are going to be there. He only played 20 last game, but if you get over 20 sub 4K, I mean, he is tempting his value at low ownership, but yeah, I don't know. I'd be lying if I said I felt great about it, but I guess just from like a process standpoint, he makes some sense if this former piece of chalk's going to suddenly be very low owned.
100%. Yeah, with Dwartz, I mean, I mentioned it in the Discord chat a couple days ago, but he like picks up fouls super fast.
He had
I
5
think
that
even
game.
yeah, even last game, like he picked up. I think he had a couple threes. Started up the game really hot from the perimeter. Picked up 2 quick fouls and got yanked. Didn't see the court till like 5 minutes left in the second quarter. So I think that's the main concern here is just like fouls and then overall like play time with Dwartz here.
No, I'm with you. So yeah, I don't mind him. I definitely trust Alexander Walker Richardson more, but if you're
Definitely.
playing a few lineups, I do think he's okay as a punt. Again, you gotta hope he doesn't get in foul trouble. Matchup with Minnesota, I mean, hopefully he's not hanging out in the paint too much with the likes of Cat and Gobert. But yeah, I mean, he does have an issue when it comes to fouling. Yeah, yeah. Steph hasn't really been hitting that ceiling frequently lately, but we know it's in his bag. And especially on FanDuel. I mean, he's getting a little bit more ownership over there at 17%, but 8,900 for Steph with no Draymond in the lineup feels like a bit of a misprice regardless of recent results. So I'm with you on Steph. It's a good matchup too against the Spurs. I don't think he's going to have any trouble finding his shots here. So good call. Definitely like the Steph play. An interesting situation we're going to have to continue to deal with all season is this Clippers backcourt. We have Paul George and James Harden popping as decent OF index plays. The price came up on Harden a little bit on DK, still only 7,400 on FanDuel. I think he's good chalk over there. I think it's a logical tournament pivot to maybe get to Paul George where he's sub 9K. We know he's still capable of that 50-point ceiling. We're just going to see it less and less frequently, again, with Russ there coming off the bench, Harden there, sharing usage with Kawhi, etc. So I don't mind Paul George, more of just a tournament dart. I do think Harden, though, on FanDuel at 7,400 is one of the first guys in for me in low risk. And we also have, he's point guard eligible and shooting guard eligible. No small forward eligibility on him, which, I don't know, makes me pump the brakes a little bit. But at the same time, I do think 7,400, he doesn't even need to be shooting that well to hit that price point. But do you have any take on the Clippers guys right now? I know it's a lot of superstars. The common cliche is there's only one basketball. But they do still have upside, I guess.
Yeah, so very tough to identify one that I really like. I think if I have Harden, 7,800, I think he's probably the best point per dollar with his current role on the team. Probably been my favorite overall play from the Clippers. And then, Russell Westbrook too. Like, he's coming off the bench. I think he's playing around 20, 25 minutes, but he's been very inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of crazy.
I mean, 6K is tempting. But again, it's just really tough to feel great about any of those guys, but obviously the field feels the same way. I'm just looking through, I'll sort by value quickly, then we can move on to forwards here. Buddy Hield, obviously, towards the top. We talked about Middleton and his minutes climbing. One play I'm constantly on as a last man in is Mike Conley. Never a high ceiling out of him, but it feels like we get 25 to 30 fantasy points from him every single night. So at 5K, I do like him in low-risk contest, or if you're just desperate for a little bit of value at guard, I think he's good there. And then Jaden Ivey's interesting to me. I did want to get to some Alec Burks, but I think they upped his price on both sites. 5K on DK, 4,700 on FanDuel. Not a guy who plays a ton of minutes, but I do think he scores pretty well here against Indiana. But again, price bump, not really able to call him value anymore. But before we move on to forwards, I guess, are there any other guards you're really looking at or feel are worth highlighting?
I think we covered pretty good here. I think that's probably the route that I'm going to go that we covered.
Yeah, sounds good. I will just quickly mention Fred VanVleet and Reggie Jackson in that first game. Probably not going to want to clog up those spots as we wait for news, but Jackson seems to be rounding a corner, actually shooting the ball a little bit on the offensive end, and Fred VanVleet feels a little bit cheap, even in a bad matchup, just knowing his ceiling. But let's transition into forwards now. Obviously, we have Giannis to discuss. He's going to profile as the best OF index play, followed by Paul George, who we just mentioned. Anthony Edwards, Kawhi Leonard. We got Wemby here against Golden State in their narrow front court. Julius Randle in a bad matchup, but he's been pretty decent. So I guess which of these forwards, obviously we talked about Giannis a little bit, are jumping off the page to you as things stand?
Yeah, so in terms of forwards, I love Giannis if he plays tonight. He's my favorite overall forward. I think we actually are probably going to have a decent chunk of value. So I think Giannis looks incredible here. The last time he played Washington, I think he had like almost a triple-double. He had like 40 and 13 rebounds. So really good matchup. I've always targeted bigs against Washington. And I don't, if he plays, I don't plan on stopping that today as well.
No, I'm with you, man. I like Giannis a lot. And if people are afraid to put him in their lineups early, it's tough to pivot onto someone so expensive. It's much easier to pivot off them. So I think that's what's maybe keeping his ownership sub 20% on both sides. We did get a couple questions in here. First one from Jose Morales. How's it going, Jose? He's asking, is Mathurin starting? I would say no if Halliburton's in. It's probably going to be Halliburton, Hield, Brown, Naismith, Turner. We've seen Naismith and Nembhard ruled out recently. Still no Mathurin in the starting lineup. Looks like they're more likely to go to Obi Toppin at the 4. And if Naismith's in, he'll start at the 4. Imagine we get Buddy Hield at shooting guard. But if Halliburton's out, we could see Mathurin starting on the wing there. They could, I don't know, start him at point. I think that's what they've done in the past, even though TJ McConnell, probably the better value play. But as things stand, the answer to that is no, Mathurin is not starting. Then we had another question here. Just trying to click it and pull it up. Again, still working on my production skills here. Cade chalky or decently priced from Nick Bass slash Base. I don't want to mispronounce that. Let's say it's Bass. But yeah, so for me, Cade, I think he's priced where he should be. Around 20% owned. He's actually one of the more popular guards, but speaking relative to the other positions, I don't think that's too chalky, him in the 20% range. We already talked on this, but you feel the same, right? As far
Yeah, I
as
think he's
Cade goes?
properly owned.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think he actually maybe just a slight bit under owned at his price tag. I don't know. I
Yeah.
think he's probably closer to 30% play. If I had to imagine by lock, he probably should be closer to around there. So I think he may be just a slight bit under owned actually.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think if Giannis is out, everyone's going to flock to Dame. That'll lower the ownership of Cade. But if
Yep.
Halliburton's out, I think a lot of people go to TJ, so that should kind of be a neutral position. So I think his ownership kind of is what it is at this point. But I do like him here. We did get news that, or not really news, that Levine and Kobe White are still game time decisions. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that one. Again, if they're both out, we're really gonna like Caruso. I think we're gonna like Caruso regardless of Levine if Kobe White's out, and then DeRozan and Vooch obviously see extra usage if those guys are out as well. So getting back to the forwards here, looking at the OF index, we talked about Paul George. I think he's fine in tournaments, but again, when you're paying that much for someone, there's a lot of risk if you're not going to get that usage. We see a pretty chalky Anthony Edwards. I do like him in the matchup. Obviously, pretty high ceiling for him. Kawhi, similar story as George. Don't need to be redundant on that one. If this Milwaukee game stays close, I do think it's Kyle Kuzma that.
I am. I think Cat is in a really good spot here. I think both him and Aints both look really good. I don't know if I play them both together, but I think choosing one or the other is a very great way to approach tournaments. And I just love Cat here. I think he's really solid. And
Yeah.
power forward is not that strong. Like power forward is pretty weak. So I think Cat makes a lot of sense to me.
No, I'm right there with you, man. I love Cat here on both sides. Love that we can play him at center or power forward. It makes it easier to build around him. And 8,400 on DK, 8,500 over on FanDuel. Totally reasonable in my opinion. I had him just pulled up. I just exited out, but if you look at the matchups he was doing well in, Philadelphia against Embiid, the Knicks pretty stout defensively, not the easiest spot. Say what you will about the Pels, but then the Suns prior to that, he's been doing really well in difficult matchups, and he gets a softer matchup here. So, no reason not to think he continues to produce at a very high level. Clicking back over to the model, we see Jimmy Butler here, still no hero, fine in tournaments, not going to be rushing to get to him against a team like the Knicks, who play pretty slow with decent defense. Another game that's not really jumping off the page on paper, but we do have Siakam and Barnes here. I know you're a big Scotty Barnes guy, obviously, excellent player. Siakam has been a little bit better lately, but do you see yourself getting to either of these two? Not the best spot against Chicago, but I think that's what's keeping them low owned.
Yeah, so I think they're both fine. Siakam's obviously coming off the massive game. Did
Mm-hmm.
not expect that from Siakam. Totally shocked me, but I think they're both fine. I'm a little bit more worried this game's going to be slower tempo with
Mm-hmm.
Chicago and Toronto. Chicago has just been really bad. So
Yeah.
I think this could play. I think Scotty Barnes had the bigger game the last time they played, but I think Siakam and Scotty are both fine tournament plays. Obviously, I'm going to side with Scotty. I just think he does more, but Siakam's definitely in playing tournaments as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. If salary is not an issue, Barnes did go for 55 the last time these teams played. He is the younger, more explosive, more athletic, generally speaking, player, better shooter. But yeah, we know what Siakam's capable of, former All Star, etc. But yeah, again, it's not the same situation as the Clippers,
No.
but it's tough to expect big nights out of both of those guys, especially against a slower team like the Bulls. We talked about the Bulls. I'd say if Levine's out, you could probably get to some DeRozan. He is super scoring dependent. Always a slow starter too. So you're probably gonna have 3 points after the first quarter. It's terrible, but after that, maybe he gets going against his former team. Someone who we haven't been targeting as much recently is Oscar Thompson. I know early in the season, he was really the apple of everyone's eye. Really talented player, as is his twin brother. But Oscar getting the opportunity here in Detroit hasn't been hitting much upside recently. I guess that's a product of the minutes. Only 24 minutes last time out, 17 against Cleveland. I'd love to spend some time digging into the rotations. We won't do that right now, but it looks like he's been in some foul trouble. Back-to-back games with 5 or 6 fouls, so Yeah, another guy been dealing with foul trouble. If he can correct that, I do think he's mispriced, and I think the main reason we haven't seen those big games are the foul trouble, or is the foul trouble rather. Misspeaking here, but yeah, he's interesting to me. Honestly, anyone in that Detroit Indiana game, if you could find a reason to play them, I don't mind them. Um, but yeah, what else do we have here? I mean, Aaron Gordon's been fine. Gordon and Michael Porter Jr., as long as Jamal Murray are out, are going to see nice upside in lineups. You can't get to Jokic. We talked about Middleton and Hield. Those are the two pieces of chalk tonight, but I think it's good chalk. I'm fine getting there. But I guess, are any other forwards really jumping out at you on the high end? And then I'll sort by value too, and we could talk through that.
Yeah, so I think Anthony Edwards is a forward. I
Mm-hmm.
like Anthony Edwards a ton tonight, along with Cat Towns. I think they're both really, really good. So Anthony Edwards, I love tonight. And then let's check out.
Value?
Let's see who's yeah Demar. Oh yeah. So just a quick note, Demar. Yeah, like you said, slow starter shot 1 for 9 to start out the game last game. So tilting.
Yeah, man.
But can't expect that again. But yeah, if no Levine, I think DeRozan looks pretty solid at 7,300. Yeah, obviously in the revenge narrative, so love that. And then yeah, Jaime Hawkes, you mentioned him, 5,300.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Small forward, power forward eligibility. If there's obviously there's no Duncan, so I think he makes sense in tournaments off the bench. Actually, he probably doesn't start. He could start, but either way, I like him off the bench as well.
Yeah, I think he's fine even if he doesn't start.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, really talented player out of UCLA. He's been shooting the ball really well. Again, still no Tyler Hero either, so there's additional usage going to him for that reason. I like the price. Let me check the FanDuel price, but 5,300 on DK. I think you could play him in any format.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean he's been really solid.
He's been awesome. And yeah, we don't love any piece of that game, but we're getting him around the same price on both sides, 7% on. Really good tournament play. I think Richardson's probably the more logical play for 1K cheaper in low risk or cash game type contest, but Hawk has definitely the higher ceiling in my opinion. And I mean, yeah, Kyle Lowry shot the lights out last game. I don't know if we're going to see that again, so I think we see better games out of some of these other Miami pieces. And then just to touch on DeRozan while I have this in my head, I mean, he's a guy who almost always comes out slow. So if you're in a state where you have a sports book and you could bet live point totals, I've made a decent amount of money just betting DeMar when he comes out flat. He won me a same game parlay last time out. I had to get 24 points out of him. It was a sweat till the very end, but yeah, a guy like when you could pick up on these things before sportsbooks do. DeMar's a guy who usually comes out slow and then gets going in the second stint in the second half. So yeah, just a quick little nugget for those joining us the day after the holiday. Again, guys, any questions? Feel free to get them in. I am refreshing the news right now. Again, the slate doesn't lock until 7:30 Eastern tonight. We're going to be on here another 10-15 minutes or so, and then I'll give Jayhawk a minute or two to breathe between getting in there on Discord. But the reason I am stalling right now is we did just get news that Giannis is in tonight. So Giannis is in. Not going to get much value from Milwaukee, but I think we still love that game. We still like Giannis as a play. Dame at low ownership is going to be appealing in tournaments. You can maybe get to Lopez. But Middleton too. I mean, he's reasonably priced, playing more minutes. A lot to like from Milwaukee. Some blowout risk, but when is there not with Milwaukee? So I think you could get to them tonight. Feel pretty good about it. You're high on these guys. Any change at all with Giannis in?
Yeah, I just think that cements Giannis here as a top play on the night. I know he's going to be low owned, and there's
Mm-hmm.
definitely the shot that this game blows out. Spread is pretty high, but even if he plays 3.5, maybe four, not the full quarter, not the full 4 quarters, but even if he plays close to it, like he can still get there. Like if they're blowing him out, he's probably the main reason why.
Yeah, and I mean, not to go have too much recency bias, but they played these guys 2 games ago with Damon. Game stayed close enough. I mean, they won by 20, and he finished with 73 fantasy points, 42 real
Yeah.
points. So I don't know if you're going to get 34 minutes out of him. But if you think back to the when they had Bud still coaching there'd be nights he played 26 minutes, still hit value. So Giannis is that guy. He is that good. So I think if you are paying up, you're almost getting a 2K discount off Joker too over on DK. So lots of reason to like Giannis here if you can fit him. And he's also center eligible, so I'll use that to segue into centers here. We got Giannis at the top with Jokic, no surprise there, sorting by OF index. Yeah, so we have Joker a little bit higher than Giannis, no surprise. I mean, Giannis does have to share that usage. Joker, very tough to afford tonight, pushing 13K on DK, 12.5 on FanDuel. Low ownership, though. I'll say whenever you get Joker at low ownership, especially with Murray out, there is merit to locking him in. It's just, I mean, it's tough, man. And if we have more value open up in some of these other spots, if Halliburton's ruled out, you would get to Jokic easier. The issue is... no, it's at 8 o'clock. So, I mean, you should be able to make some pivots. The game locks the same time as that Indiana game. So maybe if you have Halliburton in, Halliburton's ruled out, you go McConnell at guard, get to Jokic at center, have a 2-for-2 ready, something like that. Sabonis has been effective, very low owned, but very expensive. Towns we talked about, love Towns. I really like Sengun here. He's had some decent games against Denver. Obviously not a great matchup, but I think he's going to be closer to 9K as the season progresses. I'm curious on value. I mean, there's really not much value tonight at center other than Trey Lyles on DK. Do you trust Trey Lyles coming off the bench? I think he played north of 20 minutes last time out. 27 minutes out of him, 22 fantasy points. I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like, you don't need all that for him to hit value, but I mean, let me gauge your confidence level, I guess, on Trey Lyles right now.
Yeah, I am just playing Trey Lyles just because we don't have that much value.
Mm-hmm.
And he allows us to spend up for one of Jokic or Giannis. And I think both guys are both in smash spots. I'd love to get to either one or the other. If I could get to both, I'd love to. I don't know if I can, but I just think both those top guys with Giannis and Jokic are so like above the field. I think they both have 70-plus upside and both in great spots. So I just think Lyles, he's easy to play. He's 3,300. No Keegan Murray. It's going to be chalky. I think I'm personally just going to eat the chalk there with Trey Lyles.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think he is one of the better value plays, especially as far as front court plays are concerned. I will say this, though. We did have the foul trouble for Duarte, which capped his minutes. I think that did allow like 4 to 6 extra minutes for Lyles. But the thing is, I don't think you need 27 minutes for him to hit value. So I'm going to get to Lyles regardless. I'd just say maybe we don't project him for 27 if Duarte's not going to get in foul trouble. That seems unlikely, but regardless, Lyles is a good value play, especially on DK where he's only 3,300. Surprisingly, the top DK value play, though, is Brook Lopez, and I did want to pull up his game log. As a diehard Nets fan, I love Lopez, still the career points leader for our franchise, which is funny. But yeah, good old Splash Mountain coming off 2 massive games, including his against Washington where he went for 16, 9, 5 blocks, pushing 40 fantasy points. I mean, over 40 fantasy points in a really tough matchup against the Boston Celtics. So tournament play, I mean, if you're dealing with blowout risk, I don't know. But if you need to get a little bit of like mid-range value to get to a Giannis, I think both he and Giannis can have ceiling games in the same game. I don't know. I kind of like Lopez here. Definitely a tournament play. Wouldn't expect 40 fantasy points, but I mean, there's a reason the model has him as the top value play at center. I guess what's your take on Lopez? I know it's a wide range of outcomes with him.
Yeah, so Lopez, I think he is a good play. He gets a great matchup against the Washington front court. I'm not finding myself heavy in this mid tier. Obviously, like I mentioned, I'm trying to get to one of Jokic or Giannis, and then just playing Lyles at the utility. So he should be loaned, and then we mentioned Middleton should be popular too, and I like him as well. So I don't know. It's tough. I'll probably just not be there that much. I get he's a good player. I just probably won't. Roster construction wise, probably won't get there.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I mean, center is weird tonight. It's like if you're not paying up for Jokic or Giannis, I mean, we love Cat, but like rule of thumb is to play guys that have forward eligibility at forward. It's just on a night like tonight, I could see maybe playing him at center where we actually have better depth at forward than center, which is a rarity. In lineups you don't have Cat, you could go to Gobert, a little bit cheaper. Obviously not as much of a ceiling, but 6,900, especially on DK, I do think he's worth considering. What else do we have here? I mean, as far as cheap plays go, historically, Looney's had some good games with Draymond out. We haven't really seen those recently. Mitchell Robinson's kind of a boomer bust play. Definitely has a high ceiling, definitely has a low floor. Not a great matchup against Bam, but he's someone I consider. And then the chalk of all chalk last slates, Daniel Gafford. They did fix his price, but I think you could still go here maybe as a run back in your lineups with Giannis. Yeah, 5,500 for him seems more than reasonable. But again, I mean, For a decent sized slate, 8 games, center feels thinner tonight than usual. One guy I did want to talk about is Jalen Duren as well. He's been out for a while. Seems like he's back and healthy. Some foul trouble, I think, against Philadelphia, which capped his minutes. But in this matchup with Indiana, if Duren, let me check his ownership. He's someone I do want to get to, I think. Sub 10%. I think people are looking at those game logs. But yeah, if he can stay out of foul trouble himself, I think Duren has really nice upside here at low ownership.
Yeah, I like that call. Once again, mid-tier play, but gets a great matchup against Indiana. And like you mentioned, the Detroit Indiana games are just like Coors Field. They're up
Mhm.
tempo, no defense. Obviously that Atlanta Indiana game was nuts. Like,
That was
didn't it
insane.
cash the over? And like,
I bet the over live and it was like 289, and I'm like, I'm a fish
yeah,
for doing this, but
that's
it
insane.
got to 305. I was like, okay, I guess I'm not. But yeah, it closed at like 254 and it hit with like 9 minutes left. But yeah, I was just doing the math. It was like halftime. I'm like, 289 seems ridiculous, but why not be a part of history here? And it did work out. I do want to mention Miles Turner. He's fine. It's interesting, though. So sometimes we see in these games that are complete track meets, like the centers can get run off the floor. These are two teams that can play smaller. Like we could see Toppin at the 5. I mean, Isaiah Jackson could be kind of like a de facto 4/5. So I don't know. The reason you don't get too excited about centers, and I think we saw this with Capella, like that game was amazing, but the centers for Atlanta didn't do great because they kind of got run off the floor. And I don't know that that's something we can bank on. I think it's just something to keep an eye on moving forward. I will say Duren and Turner are cheap enough to still use here. But yeah, don't lock them in at 100% or anything like that just because, yeah, these track meets, the slower guys sometimes can't hang, not surprisingly. But yeah, I mean, just clicking through. Is there anyone else you want to touch on? Otherwise, I think we could do a quick DK build, quick FanDuel build, and then get you a little breath of air before we hop into Discord.
Yeah, sounds good. Appreciate it. There's one other play I want to mention because I think he's picking up a decent amount of ownership. I'm not really sure why though. Kyle Anderson,
Hmm.
4,800, picking up on DK around 25%,
Yeah, I got to
20%
refresh,
ownership.
but yeah, you might be right.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Right against Sacramento. I think I'd rather just play Cat, Nickel Walker, and Anthony Edwards. So I don't know. Kyle Anderson just seems a little bit too.
Yeah, I
I
feel
don't
you.
know. Yeah.
It's thin. I mean, the thing with Anderson, he's not always involved on offense, but he does everything else, which usually gives him a decent floor. He is coming off the bench still, but again, no Jaden McDaniels, and that I think is why people are getting to him. And I think it's more just that we don't have a lot of safe value, and he kind of feels like a Mike Conley, and that you'll probably get 25 points out of him and feel okay about it, and that allows you to get to other plays. But honestly, like I'd rather play Conley. At least I know he's going to be involved on the offense. Only 200 or 400 more. The other guy is Naz Reid, who I'm a super fan of. I just love LSU basketball. Hasn't really been hitting the ceilings lately, but we did see it last time out against Philly, a bigger team. He's in another matchup tonight against a very no, take that back completely. Ignore what I just said. Sacramento, not that big, so maybe that's why Anderson's getting some love. I think those two cut into each other's minutes. So against a team like the Kings, who has Sabonis at center and really nothing else, maybe some Trey Lyles at the 5. Maybe Anderson gets more run, Nasri gets less. But again, that's all speculative. It's really nothing we can count on. I do think he's over-owned over on DK, and then he's overpriced over on FanDuel. So I'm with you. I don't think that's great chalk. I think we have better chalk at some of the other
Yeah.
positions. But let me hit refresh on this. Again, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to get them in. Very happy to answer for anyone who's on today. I know this is not going to be the most popular NBA slate of the year. We got a holiday, we got football, we got college sports going crazy. My ad block bringing up an ad, ignore that. But yeah, just refreshing the news feed, and we did get some news here. Halliburton is in. Naismith is
Yep.
out. Nemhard is available as well. So Nemhard being in probably cuts into Obi Top, and I don't think he's necessary as value anymore. But with Halliburton in, excellent guard play. Probably takes TJ McConnell out of consideration, and we have to keep an eye on that starting lineup now. I do project Buddy Hield to still be the starter, but maybe they mix things up with Nemhard back, so definitely keep an eye on that. But yeah, let's get to building over on DK. So I think we're both on Cat again. Do you want to start with him, a power forward, 84?
Yeah, we can start with Cat. Yeah, we
Okay.
can start with Cat.
Where do you want to go next?
Uh, I think for right now, let's go Lyles at
Yep.
center.
Yeah, I don't love that he is center only on DK because he's really a power forward, but whatever. We'll go Lyles. We're 6,300 per player. Clicking through.
So real quick, we just got news. Kobe White and Levine are both in tonight.
Oh,
So
okay.
that eliminates probably Caruso and any other Bulls players for me.
Yeah, I will say Caruso still has upside. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen a ceiling out of him. He's better on FanDuel though, where you get the blocks and steals. But again, he's no longer like a major core player or anything like that.
Yeah.
But good catch though.
Buddy Hield,
Buddy
probably in
Hield.
fourth.
Yeah, that's definitely a logical one. I like it.
And then sorry, one more. Chris Middleton, I really like too.
Yep. I think we're nailing the good chalk here. Not Towns, but
Yeah.
the other three pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all solid plays. I mean, I know you really want to get up to Giannis. You want to see if we can make it work. And
I'm probably Giannis or Jokic. Jokic coming at 5% is really intriguing. Yeah, I don't know.
let's see
I know
if
he's
we can
really
do it.
expensive.
Yeah, and I'll say this for those watching: we're building more like for a large field, high risk type tournament. I think in cash games tonight, you're almost forced to go more balanced. And if you are paying up, I think the cashier kind of floor play would actually be Halliburton in that game with a very high total. But let's, for the sake of the video and for the sake of whatever, just see if we can get Jokic in here.
Yeah.
So yeah, point guard, we got to go cheaper. I mean, I don't mind Conley, who I mentioned. I don't know if there's anyone else cheap. Reggie Jackson's been okay.
Nickel Walker's 44. I mean, it's not great, but
I
like him.
Point or oh yeah, he is. No, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Alexander Walker. Just make sure he's starting for anyone watching. Coming off the bench,
Definitely.
there's a risk in his minutes for sure. Then we're left with 49. So, I mean, like I said, I don't mind Ivy. I don't mind Conley. Or maybe we start it forward and see what we're left with. I mean, we could go Burks. I don't love Burks, that's for sure.
And if Jokic is too difficult, we can also go your boy Kate Cunningham and just see from there too. I guard.
That's a good call. Yeah, I don't mind that. I mean, let's say this though. We'll do both. So we're here.
Okay.
I'll go Conley, and then we're left with 4,400 at forward. That has us. I mean, if Champagne starts, I guess. I mean, this is kind of a dead range. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Maybe Conley's too expensive, and we go down to.
How about we go Richardson at 41? I like him a lot.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
I like
call.
him as long as he starts.
Yep, as long as he's starting, that's a good one. And then I mean, I don't know, maybe Stewart isn't bad. Don't love the matchup for Smith. What's he been doing lately? I mean, he's been good. Yeah, so maybe we end up with something like this with Jokic. This is actually a pretty solid lineup. I don't think you're taking too many risks eating chalk with guys like Lyles or Nah. But let's say we pull Joker. We keep some of that value we had, and we go with someone like Cade. Cunningham there. 7,400 for forward. I mean, we could go with, since we're not playing Jokic, maybe Gordon or Porter.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, let's go Gordon. I think he's slightly cheaper. And then we're left with 79 at util. That should get us a lot of injured guys. I mean, we could go Vooch.
Yeah, it's okay.
Kind of a weird range, right?
Yeah. Let's
do this. Let's go up.
Move from Gordon, yeah.
Or let's go Jaquez here. I mean,
I love Jaquez.
Yeah, let's get him at forward. And then, I mean, we could go Dame or something.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little out there, but I like the upside for sure. And one last call for questions, guys. I don't think we have any, but I'll keep an eye on it. And let's do a quick FanDuel as well. We'll get Buddy Hield in. We'll get the obvious plays in first to keep this quick. Who else? Middleton's really cheap on FanDuel. Lyles, we can use a power forward. A little riskier here at 4K, but I don't think there's a lot of great value yet. So I think all these make sense. All right, where are we going next? No point guards yet.
Kate, what's Kate's price?
Cade is 77. We did have 7,400 Harden. I mean, I could move Middleton down.
Ooh.
Let's do this.
Harden,
let's go Cade. Let's go Harden. And then who did I pull? Middleton and put him back. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of where you're starting. And then we could almost pay up at center. I know we like Cat, though. Let's go Cat, 85. What would we be left with if I click Joker? Just curious. 5,100? I mean, what is that?
Shock is there?
I think he's just over that. Yep, 52.
Damn, that would have been such a sick play.
I mean, we could, I know that would have been fate, but I mean, let's click him and then let's pull back. I mean, I like Middleton, but I don't know that we have to force him. 56. I mean,
Maybe not.
I mean, it would be guard maybe. I don't want to go Chris Paul. I don't want to go Harden. It's interesting. I mean, as much as we like Cat, that would be an easy pivot to just go Jimmy or Zion or Siakam. Yeah, I think that would be where we would pivot as much as we like Cat. Like something like this looks good. So, all right, guys. I'm just gonna check the chat one last time. Gonna plug the Discord here. We got DFS Jayhawk in the Discord today, 7:30 up until lock. Every single day we do these live streams, and then we also have someone in the Discord voice channel answering questions, talking through core plays up until lock. It's very cheap, and as a member, you also get access to the model you see here. We also have a single lineup builder, multi-lineup builder, and the private Discord server is full of DFS pros to help you improve your game. I know we have a lot of sharp minds in there that work for Occupy. We also got guys in there that are very sharp, just in there night to night, giving guys advice, helping them out, tilting DeMar DeRozan first quarters, etc. So, yeah, just everyone, thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your weekend. Any last words, Jayhawk?
I'm gonna say, like we mentioned earlier, Homie Hawkes. We haven't seen it yet with no Duncan, but I think he drops a nuke tonight at 5,300. Should be contrarian, and I like him a lot. Both sides.
I love it, man. Jaime Hawkes, nuke incoming. Cat Towns too. Big night out of him. But yeah, good luck everyone. Let's have some fun tonight and make some money. Take care.
Good luck, guys.